What's up, everybody? This is Josh Gale, and today I'm going to be talking to you about a topic that's very controversial. You've probably already heard a lot of people talk about it, but I'm going to add my 2 cents to it as well because I'm doing a project on it. And that topic is the federal vaccine mandates.
Simmer down, shake me down, don't want me around. I call it like it is, who cut the scales now? Circle around my freedom, all these demons loud. Tell me how to think and I'ma double down. Simmer down, shake me down, don't want me around. I call it like it is, who got the scales now? Circle around my freedom, all these demons loud. Tell me how to think and I'ma double down.
Now you might be going, oh boy, here we go, another person's opinion on the vaccine who probably doesn't even know what the heck they're talking about. What does this 20-something-year-old young whippersnapper have to add to the conversation? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'll be the first to admit I'm no expert, but I've done my fair share of research and I've looked up videos from other people who are experts in certain fields, whether it be medicine or things of that nature. And with all the research I've done, I've come to the conclusion that I've come to, and I'm going to be using different argumentative techniques and resources to back that claim up. So for anyone not familiar on the situation, basically a few months ago, back in September actually, President Biden pretty much set into motion a new vaccine mandate that was federal, that applies, according to AP News, to 100 million Americans. It applied to the private sector as well as healthcare workers and federal contractors in an, quote, an all-out effort to curb the surging COVID-19 Delta variant. Now, basically the way this mandate works is he's basically saying, look, all employers everywhere, you need to mandate that your employees get the vaccine. And yes, in most cases there are medical and religious exemptions, but that's not the case all the time. That's not the case in every situation. And so what President Biden basically said is, all employers need to mandate their employees to get the vaccine, and either they get the vaccine or they get tested twice weekly or something to that effect, I believe. It's really interesting because this is the one time where President Biden, I guess, kind of takes off his diplomatic hat and he goes off and he basically just says, look, you guys that are not vaccinated are to blame, which is very interesting because this whole year or past few months we've been hearing that this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. We've been hearing that those who are unvaccinated are putting the vaccinated at risk. But the interesting thing is, as I'm going to explain later, there are many people, who, especially now with these new variants and things coming out, who are fully vaccinated yet still getting the coronavirus. And experts say that both unvaccinated and vaccinated individuals have the same amount of the virus in their nose and throat. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. So that's the situation with the mandate. Here's why I believe these mandates should be repealed. Number one, I really don't believe that any person should be forced to have to give up their livelihood, have to be fired from a job and wonder how they're going to provide for their families simply because they do not want to inject a foreign substance into their body. And at that, a foreign substance that, according to Dr. Fauci himself, is starting to wane in its effectiveness as far as immunity goes due to all the variants and things of that nature, which we can see because we've been seeing breakthrough cases going through the roof in different places like Minnesota and other places where many different hundreds of people, in some cases even thousands of people who are vaccinated are still getting COVID, are still getting hospitalized, and in some cases, unfortunately, are still dying. So the main reason why I believe this vaccine should be repealed is because, number one, the vaccine is not as effective as the mainstream media had said it was. Number two, many people are having adverse reactions to this vaccine. And number three, there are other proven ways to treat COVID that have way more effective results than these vaccines. All of which I'm going to explain further as we go along in this video. So first of all, let's talk about what some experts had to say about what are some of the things in the vaccine that make it potentially harmful. The one thing I keep hearing from various different experts is this one aspect of the vaccine called the spike protein. Let's take a look and see what some of these experts had to say.
What is happening to the spike protein? Because we know that was man-made.
So the spike protein is an issue for the first 3 months, but it causes a longer-term issue. The problem with the spike protein itself, according to the Salk Institute from San Diego, is that it itself, without the virus, causes damage. It induces blood clots in the vasculature. It lines the endothelium, which is the inner skin of the blood vessels, and damages the blood cells as they flow. And there are trillions of these little thorns. And if that damages these cells in, let's say, the heart, that causes a heart attack. In the head, causes a stroke. Now, the spikes seem to disappear or not become an issue, at least after 3 months, because we're not seeing the blood clots. However, why are the spikes there? Why are they injecting the spikes? To induce antibodies. So that your immune system sees these spikes and says, I don't like you. I'm going to make an antibody. That's the idea of a vaccine. But the problem is these antibodies that are produced are potentially lethal. That's the problem with the spike. So if you survive the first wave, so to speak, of danger, acute death, then you're in the subacute or subchronic, actually, stage where you're kind of waiting to see when you are challenged if you're going to survive. Like the animals, many animals did not survive in the laboratory.
What they are doing is the result of that injection is to create a spike protein and an antibody against that spike protein. The spike protein is the second category of injury because they can cause anywhere from 7 to 10 different direct damages to your tissues. The third category is the antibody to that spike protein, which can cross-react with 28 different organ systems in your body, causing autoimmune disease and causing that to people to get sick. The fourth category is sort of a more general category of how these shots suppress your immune system.
The way it theoretically works is there's a part of the coronavirus that causes the illness, and that's the spike protein. And this vaccine, this non-vaccine, this genetic agent, when you take it, it gives you a programmed piece of genetic material that will then produce the spike protein in your cells. Now, I will tell you that one of the things, I mean, I looked at the VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Reporting System, and you're seeing thrombocytopenia like we've never seen, where the platelets go down, you're seeing bleeding, you're seeing strokes. And unfortunately, a lot of this is not going to be recognized right away because, you know, a 75-year-old man walks into the emergency room, is taken into the emergency room with a massive brain bleed and dies, and they're going to say, well, 75-year-old men occasionally get that. What they're not asking is, when did you have your vaccine?
Now, I get it. Some of you might be thinking, but Josh, most of us got the vaccine and we're totally fine. And that might be true. But number one, it's still kind of early. Who knows what could happen years later down the line. But even if most of us have gotten the vaccine and we are totally fine, that definitely hasn't been the case for many people. Which leads me to my next section. So like I said earlier, there have been many people in the hundreds in some cases in the thousands who have had really bad adverse reactions to this vaccine. Check out these videos of real people with real stories who explain what vaccine they got and what symptoms they've been experiencing.
We all tried to do our part to help stop the pandemic by getting this vaccine. So let me introduce many of them to you, all of them weeks to months out from the vaccine, and still being affected by these symptoms.
Johnson & Johnson, New Jersey. I want to be heard.
Pfizer, Ohio. We need to be heard.
Johnson & Johnson, Tennessee.
Pfizer, Illinois.
Moderna, Texas.
I live in Puyallup, Washington. I am suffering, and I want to be heard.
Pfizer, Florida. I want to be heard.
We need to be heard.
Please, let us be heard.
I had the Moderna vaccine in Wisconsin.
Pfizer, Indiana.
Pfizer, Florida. I want to be heard.
Moderna, Minneapolis.
Moderna, New York. I need to be heard.
Pfizer, Louisiana.
Pfizer, Illinois.
I need help. I want help, and I want to be heard.
Pfizer, Maryland.
Pfizer trial for 12 to 15-year-olds, Ohio.
We need help.
We need to be heard.
Johnson & Johnson, California. Please, we desperately need to be heard.
I need help. And I need to be heard.
We need to be heard.
Moderna, Kansas.
Moderna, Virginia.
I received the Moderna vaccine on March 11th, and my life hasn't been the same since.
And we're sick, we're incapacitated, we need help. We should not have to be fighting for our existence.
I had this tingling sensation that literally went from my toes up to the top of my head. And I thought, this is really strange.
Tingling down my arm, double vision, blurred vision, light sensitivity, sound sensitivity, teeth sensitivity, touch sensitivity.
Hair loss, sunburnt feeling all over my skin, low blood pressure, 80s over 50s for weeks now.
Vertigo, fuzzy vision, paralysis.
Her heart felt like it was being pulled out of her body and then up through her neck. She had zaps, like going down in pain, going down, up and down her spine. Her feet and her hands, like at the tips, were white and they were ice cold when you touched them. She couldn't even walk. She was walking on her heels and then hunched over. You couldn't touch her anywhere on her body or she would scream.
After the second shot, there's just been more and more symptoms being sort of added to this illness. Pain in my heart, which feels like a stabbing pain inside my heart. I've had brain fog, where I often have trouble thinking of the right words. I can sometimes start talking and not know where I was going. I can be driving down the road and forget where I am.
I had the feeling of water dripping inside of my arm, an odd tingling sensation.
I literally looked down to see that I had legs, but they were not there. They were not functioning. I couldn't feel my feet. I couldn't feel anything from the waist down.
High heart rate, high blood pressure, heart pain, left clavicle pain, neck and shoulder pain.
Absurd pain with the most insane, grotesque sensation.
Thrombosis, marbling of my skin, pre-syncope episodes.
My body got flush, hot and cold. All my limbs got tingly. My head went numb, and I thought I was going to pass out.
Fatigue, sleep disturbances, skin tingly and burning, tremors, body shakes.
Heavy chest pressure. Complete numbness from my elbows to my fingers and my knees to my toes and all my limbs.
So our last testimonial is actually going to be from somebody I know personally, a guy by the name of Jared Hoffman. Jared is a guy that used to go to my church a while back. He now lives in Kentucky, and he had a friend who got the vaccine, and this is his story.
All right, what's going on, guys? Doing a little live here. I don't think I've ever done this, but wanted to share a story with you guys. It's important to me. Found out some news today. I have a friend who I met in Kentucky when I was going to school there. His name's Philip, and his wife's name is Jumai. And they're a wonderful couple. They have done mission work. They've basically given their lives to serve people and serve God. So this wonderful couple, I'll just tell you a little story about them. One day in Kentucky in 2014, I was leading worship for one of this guy's prayers events. He's a powerful man of prayer. And on the way back, my car died. They followed me. They were able to give me a ride home. They took care of me, and just a great family. So today, I haven't talked to them in years, but today I found out that this woman, the mother, Jumai, she entered the medical field and she was forced to get the jab, and she had a horrible reaction to it. Her heart had a lot of problems. She ended up losing the bottom half of both her legs, and she's now missing 3.5 fingers. Her body just basically shot down a response to it. And the reason I share this is because I've heard a ton of stories about this and horrible reactions. And I know that there's a lot of people out there who think that this is, all good at saving lives. And I don't doubt that there's some good happening from it. But also, it's very real that people need to be free to make their own decisions and need to be informed with the truth so that they don't make a wrong decision or a life-threatening one.
And as mentioned earlier, my third and final section of this video will be talking about the fact that there are other tested, proven treatment options for COVID that mainstream media is just not covering for some interesting reason. One of these is Ivermectin. And to show you guys that I'm not just making this up, because there's been a lot of negative press in the media about it, here at clinicaltrials.gov, which is under the NIH, there have been at least 2, actually from what I see here, 3 and 4 completed clinical trials talking about the effectiveness of Ivermectin when it comes to COVID. And secondly, there have been people who have come out and pretty much become spokespeople for Ivermectin, giving testimonial videos talking about how it helped them get over COVID. One of these people is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan has been pretty much blasted by most of, if not all, major news media outlets for his defense of taking Ivermectin when he got COVID. He was blasted by CNN when CNN said that Joe Rogan has basically been taking horse dewormer for COVID, which is hilarious, because when you actually hear what Joe Rogan has to say, he basically says, this was given to me by a doctor and it wasn't a horse dewormer. My doctor gave it to me because they don't just use it in horses, they use it in humans. The hilarious part of all of this is there was actually a Nobel Prize awarded to whoever made ivermectin because of its effectiveness in fighting off other diseases.
You're probably the only one at CNN that's glad.
No. We're not.
The rest of them are all lying about me taking horse medication. We should talk about that.
That bothered you.
It should bother you too. They're lying at your network about people taking human drugs versus drugs from veterinary.
Calling it a horse dewormer is not a flattering thing. I get
it's
that.
It's a lie. It's a lie on a news network, and it's a lie that's a willing. That's a lie that they're conscious of. It's not a mistake.
Yeah.
They're unfavorably framing it as veterinary medicine.
Well, the FDA put this thing out. You saw that. Did you see that thing that the FDA put out?
What did the FDA put out?
It was a tweet, and it was snarky. I admit it. They said, "You are not a horse, you are not a cow, stop taking this stuff," or something like that.
Why would you say that when you're talking about a drug that's been given out to billions and billions of people, a drug that was responsible for one of the inventors of it making the
Nobel Prize.
Nobel Prize in 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah, a drug that has been shown to stop viral replication in vitro. You know that, right? Why would they lie and say that's horse dewormer? I can afford people medicine, motherfucker. This is ridiculous. It's just a lie.
I don't think anyone is...
But don't you think that a lie like that is dangerous on a news network when you know that they know they're lying? You know that they know that I took medicine, like, here it is. This is ivermectin.
You got it with you.
Here. Somebody gave it to me.
All right, hang on. The thing is, we're like going so fast. Like I feel like I'm missing.
Do you think that's a problem that your news network lies?
Well, I don't.
Dude,
what did they say?
They lied and said I was taking horse dewormer. First of all, it was prescribed to me by a doctor.
Yeah.
Along
they
with
shouldn't have said it was
bunch of other medications.
If you got a human pill, because there were people that were taking it, the veterinary medication, and you're not, obviously. You got it from a doctor, so that it shouldn't be called that. Ivermectin can be a very effective medication for parasitic disease, and as you say, it's probably, I think, 250 million people have taken it around the world?
More,
I get that.
Way more.
So,
way more. Billions of people have taken it.
Can I just come back to the one, I want to talk about, two things on the ledger.
You have, before we get to that, does it bother you that the news network you work for out and out lied, just outright lied about me taking horse dewormer?
They shouldn't have said that.
Why did they do that?
I don't know.
And again, to push back on that narrative that it's the unvaccinated that are putting everyone at risk and putting everyone at danger when it comes to this virus, check out what Dr. Christina Parks had to say about that.
Hello, my name is Dr. Christina Parks. I received my PhD in cellular and molecular biology right here in the state of Michigan from University of Michigan Medical School. And so I'm very well versed in the science of both these mRNA gene therapy vaccines, this kind of technology, as well as what a vaccine is designed to do in the body, what it can do, what it can't do, and the fact that this is extremely complex science that has been oversimplified in the media to basically take away our freedom of choice. What I want to address today in this limited time is the fact that vaccine requirements and mandates are based on the faulty assumption that the vaccines in question prevent transmission of the pathogen, right? Does the vaccine for DTaP prevent transmission? No. Does the vaccine for flu prevent transmission? No. Do the vaccines for COVID prevent transmission? No. In fact, they were never designed to do that. All right, so you're asking, what about this 95% effectiveness? If you look at those clinical trials, they do not say that they prevent transmission. They expressly say that they're measuring whether they attenuate symptoms. So they're 95% effective based on their clinical trials at attenuating symptoms for the first variant, which is essentially gone in our population. In fact, recent studies have shown that the vaccinated, especially with the Delta variant, and the unvaccinated have similar amounts of virus in their nose and throat. In Barnstable, Massachusetts, the CDC tracked an outbreak of 469 cases of COVID. 74% occurred in fully vaccinated, and 4 out of 5 of those hospitalized were vaccinated.
Another point I want to make is just talking about the extreme censorship of the media when it comes to this topic. Like, I would totally understand it if you allowed both sides of the aisle to just engage in discourse. You have the side that's pro the vaccine, you have the side that's anti the vaccine. I mean, and in some ways we do see that, but in other ways we just see a whole lot of censorship of voices. For example, the Joe Rogan example I brought up earlier with ivermectin. They literally lied on him and told a story that wasn't true. They lied saying that he was taking horse dewormer, and even when he was talking to Dr. Gupta, he had to tell, even when Rogan was talking to Dr. Gupta, he basically got him to admit that CNN shouldn't have done that, and then that was like false. They just basically told a lie on TV. Another great example of this is Dr. Peter McCullough. Dr. Peter McCullough is a cardiologist, epidemiologist, and professor, and he was on the Joni Table Talk show from the Daystar Television Network a couple of months ago. Check out what he had to say about his experience at a certain university before COVID compared to after COVID.
But I can tell you, institutions that have tried to strip away, and in fact have stripped away professorships and credentials from me, not a single one of them has asked for a conversation. Exactly. None of them has had the courage to say, let's sit down and talk about the issues. How about a faculty senate presentation? Mm-hmm. How about a grand rounds? I can tell you, I was the endowed lecturer at Harvard 2 years ago, and there was all kinds of fanfare and all kinds of pictures. I was invited this year to an Ivy League school to give grand rounds. I chose my topic, early treatment of COVID-19. And you know what? They said there was a complete uproar, and the Department of Infectious Disease went to the chairman of medicine and said, we cannot let Dr. McCullough deliver this lecture. That's how fearful academic institutions are of medical truth.
So let's just, right before you say that, Rachel, what are your credentials? And again, I know you don't want to brag on yourself, but I can brag on you. But what are your credentials that you can share with our audience, and why this is so ludicrous?
I went to Baylor undergrad. I finished high up in my class and went to UT Southwestern. I finished Alpha Omega Alpha, which is the top 7% of the top 50% of institutions in the United States. Wow. I went to a residency at the University of Washington in Seattle, the #1 medicine residency in the United States. I went to the University of Michigan School of Public Health, considered in the top 5 institutions in the country. I've published over 650 peer-reviewed publications in the literature. I'm the president of a major medical society, editor of 2 major journals. There's nobody who goes on TV that has more academic credentials than I do, including any of our public health officials.
Basically, any doctor or expert that tries to say anything about the vaccine instantly gets discredited, no matter how many degrees they have next to their name or any of that kind of stuff. As soon as you say anything that doesn't line up with this narrative, you're automatically discredited or canceled, if you will. I don't know about you guys, but that just seems very suspicious. Not to mention all the people who have either quit or gotten fired from their jobs as a result of not going along with this vaccine mandate, or people who have quit their jobs in protest. You know, like, think about what happened with Southwest Airlines and all the people who quit their jobs there. Think about the healthcare workers who were on the front line during the whole pandemic when it started, who are being hailed as heroes, but now that they're not taking the vaccine, they're no longer heroes, they're getting fired from their jobs. Just think about that. Now, I know most of you probably have your minds made up on this whole vaccine and vaccine mandate issue, but I just wanted to share my thoughts on it, share information I found on it that maybe you haven't heard anywhere else, and just share a different perspective. Again, I'm not here to tell you what to think. Analyze the details and come to your own conclusion. But I think sometimes there's this narrative that anyone that doesn't take the vaccine is either stupid or they believe in some conspiracy theory that isn't true. But the fact of the matter is there's actually scientific data that backs up the fact that, number one, these vaccines are not that effective, especially with the new variants. Number two, there's definitely other treatments that have worked well, far better than the vaccine. And number three, adverse reactions again. Hopefully my video gave you something to think about, whether you agree or disagree or wherever you find yourself on the spectrum of the vaccine or the vaccine mandates. Hope this left you with something to think about. Encourage you guys to all do your own research, and thanks so much for watching.